She stood in front of the mirror longer than usual that evening, not because she was unsure, but because she had finally learned to pause. For most of her life, she rushed to please, to arrive early, to prove herself. But tonight was different. The dress she wore wasn't loud. It didn't beg for attention. It simply fit. Just like the life she was slowly building quietly, deliberately, on her own terms, outside. The city moved fast. New York never waited for anyone. Dreams were chased, crushed, rebuilt, sometimes all in one day. She took a deep breath. This night wasn't important because of where she was going. It was important because of who she had become. Her phone vibrated. A message appeared on the screen. "Where are you going in that dress?" She stared at it for a moment. Not surprised. Not flattered. Thoughtful. The sender was someone most people adjusted their lives around. A CEO. A man whose schedule dictated other people's priorities. A man used to being answered immediately. She didn't reply right away. That pause, that single moment of silence, said more about her growth than any confident speech ever could. Earlier that same day, she had done something unfamiliar. She had said no. Not dramatically. Not emotionally. Just clearly. A last-minute request had come in. A late-night meeting framed as important. Old her would have canceled her plans without thinking. Old her would have reshaped her life around someone else's urgency. But not anymore. She had learned the hard way that when you treat your time as optional, others will too. So she declined. Politely. Firmly. And the world didn't end. That realization stayed with her. She finally replied to the message out. Nothing more. No explanation. No apology. She stepped outside and let the cool air hit her face. For years, she believed success meant availability. That being needed was the same as being valued. She was wrong. Value comes from boundaries. Her journey hadn't been glamorous. She didn't come from power or privilege. No shortcuts. No safety nets. She came from long hours, self-doubt, and the constant pressure to prove she belonged in rooms that weren't built for people like her. At work, she was known as reliable. Capable. Efficient. But invisible. She delivered results. Yet others took the spotlight. She fixed problems quietly while louder voices received credit. And for a long time, she accepted that because she thought patience alone would be rewarded. Then reality taught her otherwise. Growth demanded something more uncomfortable. Self-respect. The dinner she went to that night wasn't extraordinary. Simple food. Soft conversation. But for the first time in a long while, she wasn't checking her phone every 5 minutes. She was present. That night didn't change her life. What had changed was her standard. The next morning, she woke up early, not from anxiety, but intention. She moved through the city like someone who had stopped asking for permission. At work, things felt the same. Same desk. Same office noise. Same hierarchy. But she was different. In the first meeting of the day, she noticed something she used to ignore. People spoke confidently even when they were unsure. Ideas were repeated until someone important claimed them. And for once, she didn't shrink. When she spoke, it wasn't louder. It was clearer. A manager tried to interrupt her. She finished her sentence anyway. Not aggressively, not defensively, steadily. The room adjusted. That was new. After the meeting, someone warned her quietly, "You should be careful. You don't want to come off the wrong way." She nodded. But inside, she understood something crucial. When you start respecting yourself, resistance is inevitable. Pressure followed her confidence. More scrutiny, more expectations, less forgiveness. But she welcomed it because pressure was familiar. She had lived under it her whole life. The difference now was she wasn't carrying it alone with self-doubt. She was carrying it with purpose. Days passed, then weeks. The message from the CEO came again, not personal, Not curious this time. Professional. He wanted to talk. Not about the dress. Not about the night. About her work. And that was the moment she knew she was no longer being noticed for how she looked or how agreeable she was. She was being noticed for how she thought. She walked into that meeting with no expectations. Just preparation. And preparation is quiet confidence. He asked questions. She answered honestly. Not impressively. Not cautiously. Truthfully. When she didn't know something. She said so. When she disagreed. She explained why. No fear. No performance. When the meeting ended, nothing dramatic happened. No praise. No promises. But something subtle shifted. She walked out knowing one thing for sure. She had crossed a line she would never return from. The line between waiting to be chosen and choosing herself.
The real test didn't come immediately. Life never tests you when you feel ready. It waits until you believe you're finally stable. Then it shakes the ground beneath your feet. After that meeting, nothing outwardly changed. No announcement, no sudden respect, no visible shift in hierarchy. If anything, the environment grew colder. People noticed her presence differently now. Some with curiosity, some with caution, some with quiet resistance. She felt it in conversations that ended faster. In emails that excluded her. In decisions made just outside her reach. And for the first time, she understood something important. Growth doesn't always look like progress. Sometimes it looks like isolation. She didn't complain, and complaints drain energy, and the energy was currency now. Instead, she observed. She watched how power moved not through titles, but through influence. Who spoke last. Whose decisions bent toward. Who stayed calm when pressure rose. She noticed that the loudest people weren't the most powerful. They were the most insecure. The truly influential ones spoke less, but when they did, rooms shifted. She adjusted, not by pretending, but by refining. She started preparing twice as much for half the recognition. Not because she had to, but because mastery creates independence. Her mornings began earlier, not to hustle blindly, but to think. She reviewed her work like a strategist, not a worker. She asked herself harder questions than anyone else ever had. What problem do I really solve? Where does my contribution compound? If I disappeared tomorrow, what would break? Those questions sharpened her. At work, pressure increased. Deadlines tightened without explanation. Mistakes and others were suddenly visible only when her name was nearby. She didn't defend herself. Defensiveness. She corrected quietly, documented clearly, delivered consistently. Consistency under unfair conditions builds a reputation no praise can match. One afternoon, a project she had been leading was reassigned. No discussion, no warning. Just a short message. She stared at the screen longer than she expected. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was politics. In politics test something deeper than skill. Test character. That night, exhaustion hit harder than usual. She sat alone, lights off, city humming outside. Gold dots. Returned. Maybe this isn't worth it. Maybe loyalty doesn't matter. Maybe effort really is invisible. She didn't judge those thoughts. She let them pass. Then, she asked herself the only question that mattered. If I quit now, am I leaving because I'm done or because I'm afraid? The answer hurt. She wasn't done. She was being tested. So she stayed. Not passively, strategically. She continued contributing without attachment to credit. She built systems instead of moments, processes instead of praise, and while others focused on appearances, she focused on outcomes. Weeks later, cracks appeared. The reassigned. Project stalled. Deadlines slipped. Costs increased. Confusion spread. Leadership grew tense. That's when her preparation mattered. She had records, data, alternatives, not as ammunition, as solutions. She was invited into a meeting she wasn't supposed to attend. No apology, no explanation, just urgency. She didn't mention the reassignment, didn't point fingers. She laid out facts calmly. Here's what's broken. Here's why. Asterisk, here's how to fix it. Asterisks. The room listened, not because she demanded attention, because she brought clarity. Pressure reveals leaders, and under pressure, she didn't shrink or harden. She steadied. After the meeting, nothing dramatic happened, but something irreversible did. Trust shifted. Asterisk. Trust is quiet, but powerful. Asterisk. From that day on, she was consulted, not included. Sought dash not tolerated. Yet with that trust came something heavier. Asterisk. Responsibility. Decisions that affected others. Failures that wouldn't be forgiven as Ollie. Expectations that didn't pause for emotion. She felt the weight immediately. Leadership isn't confidence, it's accountability. Some nights, she walked home questioning everything. Asterisk. Am I becoming distant? Asterisk. Is this success or survival? Asterisk. How much of myself do I give before there's nothing left? Asterisk. But every morning, she showed up anyway. Because discipline doesn't ask how you feel, it asks who you decided to become. Asterisk. Slowly, she noticed something else. Asterisk. Her presence changed rooms. Asterisk. People straightened when she spoke, listened more closely, argued less emotionally, not because she intimidated, because she was steady. Steadiness is rare in chaos, and rare things become valuable. She no longer waited to be acknowledged. She no longer explained herself unnecessarily. She let her work create its own gravity. One evening, long after everyone had left, she sat alone at her desk. Asterisk. The same desk. She once felt invisible at. Asterisk. She realized something that stopped her cold. Nothing external had changed her. No mentor, no validation, no moment of rescue. Asterisk. She built this version of herself, decision by decision, boundary by boundary, asterisk. Standard by standard. Asterisk. And once you build that, asterisk, no one can take it. The next phase didn't announce itself with drama. Asterisk. It arrived quietly, disguised as opportune. Asterisk. Her calendar started filling with meetings that weren't meant for everyone. Strategy sessions, closed-door discussions, conversations where silence mattered as much as words. At first, she thought this was recognition. It wasn't. It was evaluation. Asterisk. When you move closer to the center, people don't test your skills anymore. They test your judgment. Every decision now carried weight. Asterisk. If she spoke too much, she looked insecure. Asterisk. If she spoke too little, she looked unprepared. There was no script for this level. She learned quickly that leadership isn't about being right. Asterisk. It's about being responsible for the outcome even when others disagree. Asterisk. One afternoon, a decision landed on her desk that made her pause. Asterisk. It involved cutting a project that dozens of people depended on. Good people, hard workers. Asterisk. The numbers didn't lie. Continuing would drain resources and delay progress elsewhere. Emotion argued one way, reality argued another. She sat alone for hours, running scenarios, questioning herself. This was the part no one talked about. The loneliness of deciding. Asterisk. In the end, she chose sustainability over sentiment. Asterisk. The backlash came quickly. Emails filled with frustration. Conversations turned cold. Whispers followed her down hallways. She's changed. Asterisk. She's cold now. Asterisk. She forgot where she came from. Those words hurt more than she expected. Not because they were true. Asterisk. But because they came from people she once stood beside. Asterisk. That night, sleep didn't come easily. Asterisk. She stared at the ceiling, wondering if leadership meant becoming someone unrecognizable. Asterisk. Then she remembered something simple but grounding. Leadership isn't about being liked. It's about being honest with reality. Asterisk. The next day, she addressed the team directly. No corporate language, no distance. Asterisk. She explained the decision clearly, owned the discomfort, accepted the anger without deflecting. Some people understood, some didn't. Asterisk. She learned another hard truth that day. Asterisk. Clarity won't please everyone, but it earns respect from the right people. Weeks passed. Pressure didn't decrease. It evolved. Now, expectations followed her home. Problems waited overnight. Her mind rarely rested. Asterisk. She started noticing small signs of burnout. Asterisk. Shorter patience, shallow sleep, constant tension. Asterisk. So she adjusted again, not by slowing down, but by strengthening herself. She trained early in the mornings, read when others scrolled. Asterisk protected her energy like a resource, not a luxury. Because you can't lead well if you're internally exhausted. Around this time, someone from her past reached out, a former colleague, someone who had left earlier. Frustrated and bitter, they met for coffee. He listened as she spoke about responsibility, pressure, and isolation. Asterisk then, he said something unexpected. Asterisk, I thought success would make you louder. You're calmer now. That stayed with her calm wasn't weakness, it was control. Back at work, a crisis erupted without warning. A key partner pulled out. Tomlins collapsed. Leadership scrambled. Voices rose. Blame spread. She felt the familiar surge of adrenaline, but didn't act on it. Asterisk instead, she slowed down. She asked precise questions, separated noise from facts. Asterisk focused on what could still be influenced. Asterisk while others reacted, she responded. That difference mattered. Over the next 72 hours, she barely slept. Asterisk, but she didn't panic. She coordinated teams, rebuilt plans, communicated clearly. When exhaustion peaked, she reminded herself, this is what capacity looks like. Not comfort, not applause, responsibility. Asterisk, the crisis passed not perfectly, but intact. Afterward, there was no celebration, just relief, and a subtle shift in how people looked at her. Not as potential, as dependable. That recognition didn't feel exciting, it felt heavy. Because dependable people are called when things break. She accepted that. One evening, walking home through streets glowing with ambition, she realized how far she had moved from the person she once was. Asterisk, not upward, inward. She no longer measured herself by comparison. Asterisk, she measured herself by alignment. Asterisk, was she acting with integrity? Asterisk, was she prepared? Asterisk, was she growing even when it hurt? Those questions guided her more than praise ever could. She understood now that leadership wasn't a destination. Asterisk, it was a daily decision to stay grounded when everything demanded reaction. Asterisks, and this phase asterisk, this quiet, demanding, invisible phase was shaping her more than any success before it. She didn't know what the next chapter would bring. Asterisk, but she knew this. Whatever came next, she would meet it without shrinking.